Welcome. You're safe here. Tonight, we'll travel back in time to quiet workshops filled with spinning wheels, the hush of thread winding through fingers, the soft rhythm of hands weaving stories into cloth. This is not a history of kings or battles. It is a history of care, a slow, patient story, stitched one thread at a time, a story you can drift into. Let the sounds of the past lull you. Imagine the creak of a loom, the rustle of wool, the gentle voice of a mother humming by the fire. This is a journey through quiet labor, through cottage doorways and fields of flax, through the lives of those who clothed their families not with riches, but with time. So take a breath, let your shoulders relax, close your eyes if you'd like, and join me as we spin time. Chapter 1. The morning comes quietly in the countryside, not with an alarm or a rush or a clamor of bells, but with the slow drawing back of shadows, the stretch of pale light across stone paths, the rising of chimney smoke from sleeping rooftops. Outside, the trees are still bare from winter. Their branches hold a fragile coat of frost. The fields are hushed. Even the animals seem to breathe more slowly, as if the day, still folded in its corners, has not quite begun. Inside one such cottage, the spinner stirs. Her name is not written in books. She never held a title or penned a diary for future historians to quote. But her life, her craft, her day spun gently into cloth. They mattered. They wove the fabric of her family's warmth, her neighbors' wear, her own daily ritual. She is one of many, one of thousands of women across 19th century Europe who rose with the light, not to chase time, but to move with it. The spinning room is quiet. A large wooden wheel leans slightly toward the hearth. A stool sits before it, worn in the middle from long hours and generations of spinners before her. Skeins of yarn hang from a length of twine stretched overhead, dyed in soft umbers, fern greens, and faded blues like the memory of sky after rain. A woven basket by the door holds raw fleece, sheared the previous season, and waiting for its next transformation. The light in the room is not immediate. It arrives slowly, like warm water poured into a shallow bowl, touching the floor first, then the lower walls, then the shelves of dyes, one glass jar at a time. She moves gently, not rushing, not stretching too far, but letting the air around her remain still. Her hand brushes the curtain aside. Outside, the frost is melting into dew, and the early sound of a sparrow's call is softened by distance. She lights the small stove in the corner. Its belly glows dimly at first, then brightens. The metal clicks as it warms. A cast iron kettle is placed atop it, not for tea yet, but to fill the space with breath, moisture for the wool to stretch and yield to. The workshop breathes with her. On a low shelf, there is a cloth-covered book. She opens it with care. It is her notebook, not written for others to read, but for her own memory. In it are rows of words in slanted ink, dates, types of fleece, dye recipes, a simple language of labor held in quiet reverence. November, heavy fleece, soft gray with lanolin intact, weld root, for warm yellow, steep 2 days. Each entry is a pause in time, like a pressed leaf in a story. These mornings were common. They happened again and again, but that is where their beauty lies, in the repetition, in the comfort of doing something well, for no other reason than it must be done, and it must be done with care. The wool does not hurry, and neither does she. She selects a handful of fleece from the basket, cradles it with both hands, and lays it across the work table. The light now reaches her tools. There is the spindle, carved smooth with time, the carders, paddles, fitted with rows of gentle metal teeth, the nitty-knotty for winding yarn. They are not extravagant, these tools. They are worn, wooden, simple, but they are sufficient. They are familiar. They are hers. She takes a moment, places a hand on the wheel, not to spin just yet, but to connect, to begin the ritual, not as task, but as rhythm. Outside, the light continues its crawl up the wall. A cat, striped and slow-moving, climbs onto the windowsill and watches the fields in silence. The spinner stretches her fingers, long, slow gestures like dancers preparing for a quiet performance. She does not speak. She does not need to. All around her are echoes. The creak of her father's old bench beneath her, the memory of her grandmother's shawl, the story of cloth and thread told across years without a single word. And now, another day begins, not with shouts or bells or deadlines, but with a single thread drawn from a single tuft of the wool. In this world, time is not measured by hours or clocks, but by how full the bobbin becomes, by how long the light lasts, by how much of the fleece softens between your hands before the kettle sings. This is enough. This is the rhythm she knows. As the light fills the workshop completely, the wool glows golden on the tabletop. She smiles, not broadly, not grandly, but with the comfort of beginning something again, the same way it began yesterday, and the same way it will begin tomorrow. The wheel waits, the spinner is ready. The day is now hers to weave. Chapter 2. The day has begun, and before any wheel turns, before any thread is drawn, there is a gentler task waiting, a task of patience. The wool must be prepared. In this early hour, as the stove warms the room with its slow, steady breath, the spinner turns her attention to the fleece that will soon become yarn. The fleece is not uniform. Some tufts are long, others short. Some are fine and cloud-like, others thick with oils and tight curls. She picks up a bundle gently, holding it close for a moment, not an inspection, but an acquaintance. This is wool from her neighbor's sheep, a late autumn shearing. She remembers the morning it arrived, bundled in burlap, with straw still clinging to its edges. There is a scent to it, earthy, rich, faintly sweet. Lanolin lingers in its threads, the natural oil of the sheep, and her fingers glide across it like skaters on a frozen pond. The process begins not with tools, but with touch. She spreads the fleece on a clean cloth. Piece by piece, she lifts and shakes it out. Debris falls away, small bits of hay, seeds, dust. Her hands are practiced. She knows by feel which parts to keep and which to set aside. The belly wool is often coarser, the shoulder finer. She separates them into small, soft piles. A rhythm begins, slow and satisfying. There is something deeply human in the act of sorting, something ancient, long before the industrial age, before mills and spindles. There were hands and fiber and the steady sorting of material into what could be spun and what could not. The spinner is part of that lineage, not as a relic, but as a keeper of motion, a guardian of gentle process. The first preparation is done. The fleece now lies in loose, airy bundles, fluffed like the clouds that drift past the high windows of her home. Now, she reaches for her carders. They are simple tools, 2 wooden paddles, each lined with rows of fine wire teeth, bent just enough to grip the wool without tearing it. She takes a small lock of wool and lays it across the surface of the first paddle. Then she presses the second garter against it, gently, not forcefully. Then the movement begins, a brushing motion, back and forth, slowly. Each stroke lifts and separates the fibers, drawing them into alignment, teasing out the tangles, softening the mass. It is not quick work, but that is never the goal. With each pass, the wool becomes more manageable, more willing. The sound of carding is light and repetitive, a whispering rasp of fiber against metal. It joins the ambient hush of the room, kettle faintly simmering, wood crackling in the stove, the far-off call of a bird returning for spring. The wool lifts, gathers, becomes a cloud. When it is ready, she lifts it from the carder. It holds its new shape, a soft, airy roll. She places it in a wooden bowl beside her, one roll after another, like pastries on a tray, each carded bat, ready for spinning. There is no speaking in the room, only movement, only the passage of time in quiet cycles. Card, fold, lay aside. Card, fold, lay aside. Each motion has been done before, by her mother, by the women who lived in this same cottage generations ago. The tools may have changed hands, but the gestures have not. In the 19th century, this was not only a personal task, it was communal. In villages across France, Belgium, Poland, and the German countryside, women gathered with their carders in common rooms, parlors, and shaded gardens. They worked together, shoulder to shoulder, brushing wool and trading songs, gossip, and laughter. The labor was slow, but it was softened by company. But in this quiet cottage, the spinner works alone, and she prefers it that way. The solitude is not lonely. It is full of the sounds she chooses, full of the pace she sets, full of the wool that softens at her hands. An hour passes, and then another, time marked only by the deepening pile of carded rolls in her bowl. The kettle hisses softly, signaling it's nearly ready for tea. She pauses, sets down her carders, wipes her hands on a cloth. The work is not over, but this part, this slow unfolding of fiber into form, has reached its close. She stands, rolls her shoulders, then walks to the window, lifting the latch to let in a breath of fresh morning air. Outside, the sun has climbed higher. The frost is gone now, replaced by the slow melt of spring. A crow calls. Somewhere, a wheelbarrow squeaks. The spinner inhales deeply. The wool is ready, aligned, relaxed, waiting to be drawn into thread. And she is ready to spin. Chapter 3. The morning has deepened. The sun, now higher in the sky, falls in long, slanted beams across the wooden floor of the cottage. The warmth in the room has changed. Less of the stove, more of the sun, less of winter, more of spring. The kettle has been poured. A simple cup of black tea sits by the window, quietly steaming, the way a fire sighs when it has nothing more to burn. In the center of the room waits the wheel, wooden, balanced, handcrafted many years ago. The great wheel turns slowly when touched. It creaks ever so gently, as if remembering past motion. Its flywheel is round, dark with age, but smooth. The leather drive band is taut. The spinner approaches, not as a machine operator might approach an instrument, but as one might return to a friend after a night's rest. She places the carded wool within reach, then breathes in, slowly, deliberately, and begins. Her foot presses down on the treadle. Once, twice, the wheel turns, steadily, gathering speed, then finding its rhythm. That rhythm will continue now, for the next hour, or maybe two, or maybe until the wool is gone. The wheel is not fast. It was never meant to be. Each rotation is part of a sequence, a dance between her foot, her hand, the wheel, and the wool. She draws out a length of rolag from the bowl, a soft carded bundle, and touches it to the leader yarn already wound on the bobbin. The fibers catch. They cling. They merge. And then the first strand is drawn. This is called the draft, a delicate moment when fibers move from mere fluff into something with structure, with strength. The spinner draws her hands apart, not quickly, not too slowly, just enough to let the fibers stretch and thin as the wheel spins them into a single, continuous thread. The sound is soft, a flutter of foot on treadle, the swish of the wheel, the whisper of the bobbin as it turns. No clang, no grind, only breath and rhythm and movement. The spinner's eyes do not flicker from her hands. She watches the twist closely. Too much, and the thread will kink and snap. Too little, and it will drift apart. She feels it in her fingertips, the tug of balance. All the while, her foot rises and falls. Heel, toe, heel, toe. The same movement, over and over. It becomes like breathing. Inhale, exhale, draft, wind, spin. In 19th century Europe, spinning wheels came in many forms, some large and upright, like the great walking wheels found in northern France or Ireland, some smaller, tucked into corners, flax wheels, with slender spindles for linen thread. Others, like this one, were Saxony wheels, horizontal, with a drive band looping from the flywheel to the spindle, made of wood, made by hand. They were not factory tools. They were household companions. For many women, spinning was daily life. It began before breakfast, continued through the hush of afternoon, ended only when eyes grew tired, or children cried, or the sun slid below the treetops. It was a task done in silence, or in song, in solitude, or shared beside others. But always, it was done with attention. The spinner, in our story, watches her yarn grow. Inch by inch, it fills the bobbin, a creamy white thread, faintly fuzzy but strong. It carries no name, no brand, but in every twist is her hand, in every length, her hour, in every foot, her stillness. Sometimes she hums, not a song with words, just a note, a tone that fits the rhythm of the treadle. Other times she closes her eyes, lets her fingers work by feel. The wool tells her when to slow, when to pause, when to draft a little longer. It is not mindless work, but it is work that empties the mind. There is a calmness in making something slowly, a kind of dignity that comes not from finish, but from process, from the hours laid down one after another, like rows of a garden or stones of a footpath. The spinner does not rush. She spins. A bird lands on the windowsill, tilting its head toward the movement. It stays a moment, then flutters off. Outside, a cart rolls down the distant lane, its wheels faint against the stones. Inside, the only sound is the soft pulse of treadle and thread. The spinner's tea has cooled now. She sips it anyway. The bitter taste grounds her, reminds her of roots. She checks the bobbin. It is half full. She does not mark time by the hour. She marks it by the yarn. When the bobbin fills, she will rest, or begin a new one. The spinning continues. Wool becomes yarn. Yarn becomes future cloth. Cloth becomes story, a sleeve, a shawl, a cradle lining, a bandage, a flag, all begin here, in a quiet room, in the hands of a woman, with a wheel and a treadle and a thread drawn from silence. Spin, twist, wind, breathe, begin again. Chapter 4. The yarn is spun. Bobbins full, spirals neat and fine, soft to the touch but strong. But it is still pale, still quiet. Its voice has yet to be chosen. Now comes the part where color is invited in, not with chemical vats or industrial processes, but with plants, with roots and petals, bark and berries, with the quiet gifts of the garden and the forest path. In the 19th century, long before synthetic dyes crowded the marketplace, colors came from what was close at hand, from the fields, from the hedgerows, from pots simmered over open flames. Dyeing yarn was not simply a step, it was a ritual, slow, fragrant, and deeply personal. In our spinner's cottage, the hearth has been cleared. A wide iron pot hangs over the fire, its surface blackened with age and use. She has gathered her materials: madder root for red, onion skins for gold, walnut husk for brown, and a faded linen pouch of dried woad leaves for the elusive blue. Each holds a secret shade. Each waits to bloom in water. Lukewarm water, drawn fresh from the well. A shallow basin, handmade, its glaze cracked slightly with age. She lowers the skeins into the water, pressing them gently with her fingers, watching them grow heavy, watching them sink. The fibers relax. The twist eases. The yarn drinks deeply. Now comes the mordant, a vital, invisible part of dyeing. It is what makes the color stay. Alum is her choice, a mineral salt. Gentle on wool, she adds a spoonful to the warm water in a second pot, then carefully transfers the yarn, lifting one skein at a time. The pot is placed on the fire, not to boil, but to simmer, slowly, gently. As it warms, the room fills with a faint metallic scent, something ancient and alchemical. While the yarn steeps in the mordant bath, the spinner prepares her dye pot. Today, she chooses madder root, a deep red, not the crimson of kings, but the earthy red of brick paths and clay soil, a color rooted in warmth. The roots are hard and twisted, dry to the touch. She crushes them with a wooden pestle, releasing a scent that is both sweet and bitter. They are wrapped in muslin like tea, then lowered into the dye pot filled with clear water. Over the next hour, the water will deepen, from pale pink to copper, from copper to rust, from rust to a rich barn-red glow. There is a kind of waiting here, not impatient, not idle. The dye must brew. The water must coax the color from the root. And so, the spinner stirs slowly with a wooden spoon. Once, twice, then not again. She leaves it be. In the meantime, she kneels to check the yarn. The alum bath has done its work. The fibers are ready to receive. Carefully, she lifts the yarn, warm now, supple, dripping, and lowers it into the dye. The water steams gently. Color swirls upward like smoke. The yarn begins to change. This part cannot be rushed. The yarn will sit in the dye for nearly an hour, gently turned every few minutes. Not stirred, not agitated, just moved, carefully, so each strand finds the color evenly. She sits nearby, watching. The fire cracks outside. Birds return to the hedges. The dye smells faintly sweet now, like damp leaves, like earth after rain. In some villages, the dyeing was done outdoors. Large pots over open fires. Women in aprons, skirts tucked, hands stained gold or purple. In others, it was done in communal dye houses, especially for indigo, whose fermentation gave off sharp, sour odors, crackles. But in the home, dyeing was intimate, a task done with silence and care, a transformation that felt sacred. When enough time has passed, the spinner lifts the yarn. It drips. Slowly, the red is deep now. Not crimson, not orange, but something between, like the inside of a ripe fig. She hangs it to dry on a wooden rack near the window. Will stay until evening, turning slowly in the breeze, catching light, changing again as it dries. She cleans the pot, pours the leftover dye into the garden, where the soil will absorb what's left. Tomorrow, she may try walnut husks, or perhaps onion skins for golden tones. But today, the red is enough. The yarn will not be uniform. Some skeins darker, some lighter. There will be inconsistencies, small, quiet variations. But that is what she likes. That is what makes it hers. In the factory yarns, color is perfect, exact, reproducible. But in hers, there is memory. A warmer pot, a longer soak. A bundle left slightly longer than the others. All of it held in the color. She breathes in the scent of drying wool. The fire dims. The room cools. The yarn is dyed, and the wheel, quiet now in the corner, waits for its thread to return. Warmer, brighter, changed. Chapter 5. The yarn has dried. Hung in golden sunlight, it twisted gently in the breeze. Now, it lies in skeins again, warm with dye, rich in tone. Its journey is not yet complete. Not until the thread has found its place. Not until it has become cloth. In the far room of the cottage stands another companion of the spinner. A loom, tall, wooden, sturdy, a frame of aged timber and worn heddles. It dominates the room with its quiet presence, not threatening, but enduring, like an oak that has stood in one place for many seasons. This is a simple floor loom, 4 shafts, 2 treadles, large enough to make cloth for garments, aprons, pillowcases, but small enough to live in a family room. Looms like this were once as common in homes as bread ovens or spinning wheels, and like the wheel, it asked for time, not loud, urgent time, but patient, steady time. The spinner becomes the weaver. She stretches the warp, the vertical threads that will form the skeleton of the cloth. She winds them tightly, in parallel, across the length of the loom. Each one must be smooth, equal in tension. The process takes hours, sometimes days, but today, she has done it before. The warp is already dressed, waiting. Now comes the shuttle, a slender tool of wood holding the weft, the yarn that will run from left to right, the yarn she spun, the yarn she dyed. She presses the first treadle with her foot. The shafts rise. A shed opens, a path through the warp. She sends the shuttle across, smoothly, gently, then pulls the beater forward, tapping the weft into place. A soft thump. Again, she presses the treadle. The shed reverses. She sends the shuttle back. Another soft thump. A rhythm is born. Press, pass, beat. Press, pass, beat. Weaving is rhythm. Not just sound, but movement. The shifting of warp threads. The slide of the shuttle. The beat of the beater. A choreography of stillness and motion. There is no hurry. Cloth grows, row by row, like bricks in a wall, like the rings of a tree, like the days of a life. The weaver watches closely. She guides the edges with care, pulling just enough to hold tension, not enough to draw the cloth inward. She feels the thread between her fingers, sensing its thickness, its resilience, its mood. Sometimes the weft resists, sometimes it glides, but always it reveals something new, a twist she missed, a knot she tied without knowing. All of it becomes part of the pattern. The cloth she is weaving has no printed design, no bright motifs, just simple rows of dyed wool, a quiet red, uneven and soft, carrying the memory of the madder root. This will be for the body, perhaps a shawl, a coverlet, a winter garment for a child not yet walking. Its purpose is not fashion. It is warmth. It is care, made tangible. As the afternoon deepens, shadows shift across the loom. The light softens. The fire in the stove settles to a glow. But the weaver continues. Press, pass, beat, hands and feet in harmony. She hums, perhaps, a song her mother once hummed, or simply a tune that lives in the rhythm of the shuttle. In 19th century Europe, household weaving was not only for the poor, it was for the skilled, the frugal, the women who mended rather than bought, who measured worth in hours and thread, not coin. In towns and villages, woven cloth might be traded, bartered, gifted, a bolt of linen in exchange for a bushel of grain, a woolen coverlet as a bridal dowry, a set of hand towels as a baptism gift. Cloth was not just useful, it was love in material form. The weaver pauses. She touches the finished portion of fabric, still warm from her hands. It is not yet done, but it is real. Something made where there was nothing, from sheep to yarn, from dye to thread, and now, from thread to cloth. She smiles gently, then rises to stoke the fire. Tomorrow, she will continue, slowly, thoughtfully, letting the fabric come into the world, one shuttle pass at a time. The loom does not rush. It waits for the weaver. It teaches that patience is not delay, but devotion. That making is not about speed, but attention, and that the quiet, steady work of hands can create something that lasts. Chapter 6. The loom is quiet now. The last threads have been woven. The cloth is finished, dyed, dried, and folded. But its journey continues. Because in 19th century Europe, cloth was not merely an object. It was presence. It was ritual. It was woven into life itself. Each piece of fabric had a place, a purpose, a story told not in words, but in how it was used, mended, saved, and passed on. The home, humble or grand, was wrapped in it. In the kitchen, a linen towel hangs from a peg, worn thin at the corners, but still used daily. It dries the stoneware bowl, wraps warm bread to keep it soft, serves as a sling for lifting pots from the hearth. The cloth remembers all of it, every meal, every spill, every season. And when it tears, it is not discarded, it is mended. A patch here, a hand stitch there, holding the years together. In the bedroom, there is the quilt, layer upon layer, stitched by hand. Its underside, plain calico. Its top, a mosaic of scraps, a corner of a child's apron, a sleeve from a brother's old shirt, a piece of the wedding dress. Every square is a memory, every stitch a quiet devotion. Quilts were not only for warmth, they were for remembering. In the child's cradle, a swaddling cloth, once used by the mother herself, clean, cool linen, edged with delicate hand embroidery. It is not precious because it is perfect. It is precious because it endures. Throughout the house, fabric moved with the rhythm of life. Curtains drawn at dusk, aprons tied in the morning, bonnets fastened at the neck before stepping out, handkerchiefs offered in moments of kindness or grief, in silence or speech. The cloth was always present, And on wash days, the linens were gathered, carried to the stream or the communal washhouse, soaked in lye or ash water, scrubbed against wooden boards, beaten clean, then spread across hedgerows and grass to dry in the open air, a row of white linen fluttering in the sun. That was a common sight, a kind of soft domestic banner, proclaiming care, labor, continuity. Textiles were more than fabric. They were family. When a child was born, she was wrapped in cloth. When she married, she carried linens in her dowry, often spun and woven by her own hands. When she died, she was shrouded in white and buried with love. Cloth held us at the beginning, the middle, and the end. In village life, many households made their own, but even in towns, textiles were exchanged like stories. A neighbor might trade you a wool shawl for a basket of eggs. A cousin might gift you hand-sewn lace as a christening present. In poor homes, a single tablecloth might serve for every holiday. It would be taken from the chest and laid with ceremony, no matter how threadbare. In wealthier homes, fine linen and damask marked the seasons, changing with feast days, weddings, harvests. But whether plain or elaborate, cloth carried meaning. Even the act of sewing was part of daily life. Girls learned early, their first stitches crooked but proud. They sewed samplers with their names, alphabets, and tiny red flowers. By adolescence, they could mend socks, hem skirts, fit sleeves, and in evenings after supper, sewing circles gathered, not to work in silence, but to talk, to share recipes, stories, sorrows. Threads looped through cloth, and lives looped through each other. Cloth was so valued that nothing was wasted. When a garment wore out, it was turned. Its inside made the outside. When it tore, it was patched. When it shrank, it became a child's garment. And when even that was no longer possible, it became a rag for cleaning, or stuffing for a mattress, or a strip to bind a wound, until at last, the final threads returned to the earth. In some places, there were ragmen who collected these cast-off scraps from house to house. They would sell them to paper mills, where rags were turned into pulp. So, even in their end, the fabrics spoke, transformed not just into rags, but into words, letters, books, history itself, written on the remnants of aprons and petticoats. In this way, the everyday cloth of 19th century Europe was never just material. It was memory made touchable, a language of fiber and hand, of care and patience. Even now, if you close your eyes, you might recall the weight of a woolen blanket, the cool crispness of line-dried sheets, the way an old shirt holds the shape of someone who wore it long ago. Textiles live with us. They wrap us in time. Chapter 7. The last thread has been woven. The loom rests in stillness. The yarn has taken its final form. A piece of cloth, warm, quiet, and complete. But though the work is done, its meaning lingers, like the scent of dye in the air, like the hum of a wheel in an empty room, like the memory of a hand that once held a spindle, or passed a shuttle, or folded a finished garment at dusk. In every corner of 19th century Europe, cloth was made, worn, repaired, and remembered. But unlike castles or monuments, these stories were not built to last. They were sewn into the hem of a skirt, pressed into the folds of a shawl, washed out over and over again, until only the feeling remained. For centuries, women and men alike worked in small rooms, surrounded by baskets of wool, pots of dye, bundles of flax. Their days followed the rhythm of fabric, of fiber softened in dew, of yarn drying by the hearth. of cloth stretched out for measuring or laid flat. Theirs was a quiet labor, not the kind that fills books or ballads, but the kind that fills a home and holds it together. In many households, cloth held more than the body. It held the past, a mother's apron passed down to a daughter, a quilt stitched by 3 generations, a christening gown that had seen 20 babies and as many blessings. Each tear, each fray, each mended corner was a note in a family's long, quiet song. Even the smallest scrap could carry the shape of a loved one's life. But time, like water, wears through all things, and so much has disappeared. The looms dismantled, the threads undone, the hands that wove, long folded. Most of these old textiles are lost. They returned to the earth, as they were always meant to, wool to soil, linen to seed. What remains more than any one garment is the spirit of making, of patient hands, of quiet minds, of care, measured not in currency, but in time. Sometimes, in a museum, you might see a piece of 19th century cloth behind glass, a sampler sewn by a 10-year-old girl, a laborer's smock, a length of hand-woven flax. They sit in silence now, fragile, preserved, but they once lived loud, daily lives. They wiped tears. They carried loaves. They comforted fevered foreheads. And when they frayed, someone sat down to mend them. That is the legacy they carry. Not perfection, but perseverance. We speak often of history as kings and battles, but the greater part of it is this: cloth laid over tired shoulders, stitch by stitch, moment by moment. It was in the aprons worn to market, in the shawls wrapped tightly on winter mornings, in the curtains pulled closed to keep in warmth, in the cloth bundles cradled by travelers, carrying all they owned, soft, silent histories, held in threads. Today, few of us spin, fewer still weave, but we are still surrounded by textiles, and some still choose to make, to sew, to knit, to dye with their own hands. In that choice is a remembrance, a nod to those who came before, those who rose with the sun, tied on an apron, and began again, not for glory, but for family, for warmth, for the dignity of the everyday. Perhaps tonight, as you lay beneath your own blanket, you will feel it, that old, invisible thread, connecting you to centuries of hands, to women spinning by firelight, to dyers and weavers and menders, to every person who ever wrapped a loved one in something soft and handmade. The thread is still there, weaving through time, quiet, enduring, strong, like cloth, like memory, like love. Chapter 8. The day draws to a close. Outside, the sky is softening, a pale gray, turning gently toward violet. Inside the workshop, the final chores begin. There is no rush, only a careful rhythm, the kind that comes after hours of quiet labor, a rhythm known to all who work with their hands. The shuttle is placed back on its shelf. Spindles are gathered, carefully, without a word, and set beside the hearth to rest. Bundles of wool are rewrapped and tucked into linen sacks. The dye pots, now cool, are gently covered with cloth. A broom moves slowly across the floor, not to scrub, just to sweep away the day. Loose thread, a few stray bits of fluff, a small scattering of fibers, like breadcrumbs, left by the work just finished. The spinning wheel stands still. Its work is done, for now, but it is not forgotten. The wheel is wiped down with an oiled cloth, its joints checked, its treadle cleaned. Tomorrow, it will be ready again. But tonight, it rests in quiet silhouette. In one corner, Skeins of yarn are being wound, the final skeins of the day, pulled from the spindle and wrapped, not too tight, not too loose. The fiber glides gently between fingers, forming soft loops of finished thread. When done, the skeins are placed into a basket, a small round one, lined with linen and smelling faintly of lavender and wool. This basket holds the day's work, and with it, its meaning. Every thread a measure of time, every skein a symbol of the hands that turned it. It is not only wool or flax that was spun today, but a quiet kind of devotion, a patience few see, a stillness that goes unnoticed. This is the hour of low voices, of tea warming by the fire, of hands resting in laps. Some may take up small sewing, perhaps a tear in a cuff or hem. Others may fold the cloth made that day, stack it neatly, or lay it over a chair to air before tomorrow. In the smallest homes, evening is when the stories begin, told softly over the click of needles or the rhythm of embroidery hoops. Childhood tales, old sayings, legends once whispered to the spinner herself when she was young. Around the hearth, these quiet voices weave a new kind of fabric, the cloth of memory. The house settles, a soft creak of old timber, a wind brushing past the eaves. Beyond the windows, the world is darker now, but inside, there's a small, golden center, like the core of a spinning wheel. Still, balanced, complete. In the great cities, the workday ends differently. Whistles sound from factories. Workers pour into the streets. But even there, in rented rooms and workers' tenements, a few still turn to thread, an hour before bed spent darning socks, sewing buttons, or mending a coat that must last another winter. However modest, these end-of-day rituals matter. They are quiet acts of continuity. Whether in countryside cottages or crowded city lofts, the final hour of the textile day is the same. It is marked by care, by the closing of scissors, the folding of cloth, the brushing of wool from a sleeve, and the silent promise that tomorrow it will all begin again. Spinning, like life, is circular, a beginning that always returns, thread wound, then unwound, then woven again. The day may end, but the thread continues. The wheel will turn once more. The loom will sing its quiet song. But not tonight. Tonight, all is still. The workshop sleeps, and so do those who tended it. In the hush of the room, you might hear the last sigh of warm wool, the heartbeat of a home resting in candlelight. Wool, the breath of a spindle cooling. The tools are cleaned. The wheel stops. Yarn is wound into skeins and placed gently in a basket. Tomorrow will come, and the spinning will begin again. But for now, the threads are quiet, and so are we. Good night. Chapter 9. The cottage darkens. The fire has burned low, a cradle of glowing embers casting its final light on the floorboards. A single candle still burns, its flame small, steady, like the last word of a long story. The book beside it is closed, its pages filled with songs, perhaps, or patterns for weaving, or old tales passed down through generations of hands. The spinner sleeps. Her work is finished. The wheel, silent. The fibers, at rest. The yarns, wound and folded. Her hands, so practiced in motion, lie still now atop the quilt that covers her. Her rest is earned, for the day began in dawn's hush, with fingers already in motion. From flax to spindle, wool to carder, thread to loom. The day unfolded with quiet purpose, and now her body, like the wheel, slows, then stills and begins to drift. In the peaceful dark, the quiet is not empty. It is full, full of breath and warmth and dreams. The mind, even in rest, continues to spin. Not yarn now, but stories, images, gentle echoes of the day. She dreams of flax fields, golden in the morning sun. She dreams of sheep with wool like clouds, of dyes blooming in pots like watercolor paint, of her mother's hands, guiding hers, of the first time she spun a thread without it breaking. The dreams are warm, not grand, not strange, but rooted, familiar. They drift like threads in water, each memory tied to a feeling, safety, rhythm, time. In her dream, she hears the whisper of fiber through fingers, the murmured lullaby of the wheel, the weight of a woolen shawl on her shoulders. Outside the cottage, the world sleeps too. The trees sway gently. An owl calls from the dark. And above, stars scatter across the night, like grains of carded wool in a basket. The window glows faintly from within. The candle, still burning, wavers just once more. In another hour, the candle will burn out. It does not need to be watched. It knows its role, to guard the threshold between waking and dream, to warm the air just enough for rest to come without effort. The spinner does not stir. Her breathing is soft, rhythmic, as if mimicking the wheel's treadle in sleep. There is something sacred in this hour. It is a time outside of time, when labor is done, but the fruits of that labor still hum gently in the air. The fibers she spun today will not vanish. Tomorrow, they may be dyed, or woven into cloth, or sent to a neighbor, or packed for market. But tonight, they wait. As she waits, at the edge of sleep, and in her dream, the thread continues. It leads through a meadow, through time, through generations of women and men who have spun and sewn and worn the cloth of their lives. They walk beside her. They hum with her. They teach without speaking. Their presence felt in every turn of the wheel, in every knot tied, in every thread smoothed. Sleep is not forgetting. It is remembering in another language. And so, the spinner rests. The cottage glows faintly in the dark. The world outside spins slowly on, while inside, all is still. The story of the day is complete. The rhythm of labor gives way to the rhythm of breath. Tomorrow will come, and the spindle will be lifted again. But tonight, she is held in the gentle hush of sleep. Sleep full of thread, and memory, and time. Good night. Chapter 10. As your eyes grow heavy, think of the threads that hold history together, spun slowly, lovingly, just like time itself. Good night. Over the rooftops of the quiet village, a hush has settled. Chimneys no longer smoke. Curtains are drawn. Candlelight is out. All is wrapped in shadow, except the sky. The sky, vast and deep, stretches above like a great woven cloth, threads of night, threads of starlight, threads of time. You may not notice it, but you are always wrapped in the work of others. In every stitch of your bedding, in every fiber of your clothes, lies a story. Someone once, with care and effort, raised sheep, combed wool, spun thread. Someone once bent over their wheel or their loom in the hush of another night. And now you rest beneath their labor, held by it. Imagine, if you will, that you are drifting upward, light as thread, rising slowly into the night, just above the rooftops, above the quiet fields, toward the stars. Each star, a knot in the weave of the sky. Each constellation, a pattern, a memory. The Big Dipper, the Pleiades, Orion's belt. Ancient names, remembered in every tongue, stitched across cultures, across centuries, a tapestry for all who've looked up before you. And perhaps, just perhaps, there is a spinner in the stars too, one who spins time itself, a wheel that turns slowly with every breath of the earth, one thread for every life, wound together, unraveling, and winding again. This thread, the one you are on, is strong. It stretches behind you, through generations, and before you, into tomorrow. You are part of this great weaving, just like the spinner in her cottage, just like her mother, and her mother before. All lives woven together, held not by fame or fortune, but by care, by the small, slow, beautiful things. A shawl passed down, a spool of thread kept safe, a child taught to tie a knot, a patch carefully sewn on a worn sleeve. These are the stitches of time, quiet and real. So let the night wrap around you now, as gently as woven linen. Let your thoughts unravel as the wheel slows and stops. Let your breath fall into rhythm like shuttle on loom, back and forth, quiet and easy. Tonight, there is no work, no need to spin, no need to weave, only to rest, to let your mind drift where it wants to go. Perhaps you dream of soft fibers again, of looms in moonlight, of thread between your fingers, smooth as silk. Or perhaps you dream of nothing at all, just darkness and warmth and stillness. However you drift, you're not lost. The thread is still with you, and it will carry you into morning. Rest now, beneath the woven sky. The stars will watch for you, the wheel will wait for you, and time will turn, very slowly until dawn. Good night, spinner of dreams, sleeper beneath the cloth of time. Good night.